turn around and we just like Philip talked about his level of anger. How do we help persons to get those angers out? We are not creating that space. And some of the very, when we talk about alignment, when we talk about bullying, we talk about aligning ourselves and seeking the support. But the very same support that we are looking for from each other is the very same kind of support the other person is looking for us from us as well. So how do we align ourselves with the differences so that we can connect and where the intersections, see the differences, and join despite the differences to become a community where we can heal from within.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
Um, can I actually add to that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Keith, as a female therapist, most of my clients are females, and I think about the need for black men to heal, and I always wonder, number one, how I could draw them in, and then number two, having had black, because we do self-identify and self-disclose, having had bad experiences with males, am I going to be able to step aside as a therapist and work with them in the way that I should, but knowing that they are hurting as well? And I have this dilemma that I struggle with. Gosh, I want to reach out to the black male community because I know that they have a need. Okay, well maybe they can't identify with me as a female, but they need help. And so, I really thank you for speaking as openly and honestly as you have. There is a lot of pain out there.
A lot of pain.
Yeah, lots. And I just thank you for just being as honest as you have been. Yeah.
Thank you. To piggyback on that, there is a lot of pain and a lot of the fact that sometimes men don't know how to be in the context of the relationship, and that could be a whole nother week of discussions. But think of this: in the context of slavery, the relationship wasn't encouraged. The families, the connection to the family. The master can sleep with your wife. You frown, you're sold. You're being sold. You're going to Boston. Think about that. Think now. The role that the black woman had to play to balance that and be mother and father at times. Slavery gets abolished. We move on with our lives, but this has become now conditioning. And we are hoping and wondering why sometimes there's not as much family connections regarding those folks that went through that journey, and not recognizing that they are disconnected, and in the relationship, how do a woman makes that man feel like a man while also ensuring her best life? And it's a challenge to our community regarding the roles in a society that has changed, and that both parties are out there trying to make it and still being impacted by the variables of challenges that we face. It is obvious that if certain groups are more marginalized, they will have more challenges on the mental side and in all aspects, because this all affects us in everywhere that we are. The workplace, it affects us everywhere. But what we're finding is our young men are turning on each other. And who would think that the generations post-slavery, the early generations, weren't as violent? And the generations that are so distant now from that are turning on themselves, and we're wrestling with that, because It's indicative of what kind of future if women don't have compatible mates, you know. But we're challenged, and we're here because we absolutely believe that we can change it, but it needs for the dialogue that is open and that we speak with candor, like you folks are doing today, and we appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions to ask the panel? Further questions?
Just a question on the science we use in terms of dealing with trauma, whether it's social work or psychology and so on. It's so Eurocentric in Canada, right? It's all based on not our culture, not that culture, not other cultures. How do we address that?
Okay, I think I kind of spoke similarly to this earlier. I talk about the relationship between the therapist and the client, or the worker and the client, or the clinician and the client. I think it's impossible to come to any type of work without bringing yourself in. So if you have a certain cultural value and you're working with someone, and they're of a similar culture as you might be working from a CBT mind frame or a solution-focused mind frame or whatever therapeutic modality you're working with, but you're bringing in the self as well. And so, you know, we understand that these models that we have are Eurocentric and, you know, that they weren't designed by us. But at the end of the day, I work with human beings. I'm a human being. So I bring myself to the, you know, to the work that I do.
For me, the approach that I usually take, first, as you rightly said, I enter the room as a human being. And I enter the room with a very inviting, warm presence that will encourage that young person. And what I often say to that young person, starting the conversation, is that you are in the driver's seat. You determine what goes on in this room. And I'm hoping that I can facilitate that conversation with you in a way that is meaningful for you. And so when a young person opens up about his pain or his anxiety or his depression, I will then start in doing an assessment around what's going on in the individual's life. I will ask about parent-child relationship. I will ask about who's at home. I'll talk about support systems in place. And as that conversation opens and unfolds, some person will talk about dad is not there. Then I will also, that opens up the conversation to find out where is dad and what happens to dad and how do you feel about dad not being there. The conversation might then lead down the path of mom. Where is mom? Why is mom not there? What are your relationship with mom? Who else is there? What are your relationship with those other persons who are there, are not there? And then with that, that teases the conversation out to an extent that I can get a fairly good understanding of what's going on. As I said, fairly good understanding. It's not that I have a full understanding, because the understanding unfolds as the session goes on. And sometimes, because of the nature of my work, I work within a WhatsApp walk-in clinic setting, as well as I do some private practice on the side. And I also work within the community. So it creates a very unique setting for me, because not everybody wants to come into that structured place to have that conversation. So I can have my conversations in Tim Hortons, I can have my conversation in a community setting, I can have my conversation in wherever that young person, if it's warm and a nice sunny day, I can have it in the park. So it opens up the space for the individual to have that conversation. But what I find very helpful for me as well is to invite the person into a structured environment, especially somebody who has never operated within a structured environment. So I'm in the walk-in every other Monday, and so I will invite a person to that space so the person get a feel of what that looks like. So I slowly introduce that person to that space. The person may or may not like it in that context, and so I can say to the person what works best for you. Again, allowing the person to self-determine where he or she wants to meet me. When I speak with a young man, again, I often ask about their relationship with their dad. And that opens up the conversation in so multiple different ways. And so I get to talk. Like last week I met a young man. He's from the Tamil population. And as we were talking, we then talk about where's dad. And that just went off on a different tangent. Because there was so much anger around dad not being there. And just similar to our population, black men, Tamil dads are also very much absent. And absent does not mean being away. Absent being at home and emotionally unavailable. There are many of our parents who are emotionally unavailable. They are present, the food is there, the clothing is there, the shelter is there, but the feelings and emotions that make us human beings don't get discussed. And that's where the pain lingers. There is a psychiatrist who has done some work and continues to do some work out of Boston, where he writes this book, The Body Keeps the Score. And the trauma that we carry sits in our bodies if it does not get resolved. And it manifests itself in different ways. How do we have those conversations? And it's about listening to each other. Listening to each other. Creating that space. And that space doesn't mean that you have to go sit down over dinner. That space doesn't mean that you have to have a healthy relationship with me. There are some persons who, when I meet them for the first time, they just need somewhere to tell their story, get it out of their heads, get it out of their bodies, and then they are gone for another month or two, and they come back to start processing with me. People are not getting the space to have these conversations. So many of us are walking around like a ticking time bomb. A ticking time bomb. Put a kettle on the stove. When it starts whistle, if we don't take off the lid, continue whistling. The behavior is the whistling. It's the cry for help. It's the cry for help. We have to stop and start listening to one another. Partners listening to partners. Parents listening to children. Children listening to parents. People creating that safe, supportive space. And a safe, supportive space does not just happen overnight. It takes work. It takes effort. It takes time. It takes commitment. And it's not about just jumping, singing kumbaya with each other. It's about taking time to understand each other, understand what makes you tick, understand your strengths, understand you as a human being. Something else that I do with young people is to say to them, tell me some things that you like about yourself. And that opens up another conversation with them, because oftentimes they will chuckle, that little smile that oftentimes suggesting that smile of discomfort, and what they will say, why don't you just ask me what I don't like about myself? Because that is so much easier to do. And I will say to them, I know you have 20, 50 things that you don't like about yourself. But this conversation is not about what you don't like about yourself. I want to help you to start shifting your brain to the positive side, where you start thinking about, what do I like about me? Internalize that focus. Turn that focus onto yourself. What do I like about me? What do I like about me when I stand in the mirror? What do I like about me when somebody tells me that I don't look good, I am not attractive, I am not handsome, I am not pretty? What do I do? How do I buffer that? Because when I have the skills to do that work on myself, and I have the language, and when we talk about language, it's about having the words. Many people don't have the words to describe themselves because we lack the language. We lack the words to describe themselves. I am handsome. I am beautiful. I am strong. I'm educated. I am whatever words you want to describe yourself. And what I do with them, I have them make a list of those things in my session, and they carry it with them. And every time I see them, I ask them, what else have you added to the list? Because we need to develop, we need to strengthen people. We need to reduce the negative and build the positive.
Sure. Can I just add something to that? Let me just add something to that. I coached basketball for a number of years, and I mean, Keith is hitting a lot of points, hammer right on the head. I run a clinic at Missouri County for a good number of years, a free clinic, and I had about 30 kids. So, you know, just general conversation, I like to talk to the young people when I'm there. I said to them, how many of you live with your father? None of them. How many of them like their father? None of them. And I said, wow. And then you wonder why our society and our people are the way they are. You know what I mean? Where there's, you know, there's an old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. You know, and you know, like, it's difficult. I know for a fact, it's difficult to talk positive about yourself sometimes. I know that for a fact. It's much easier talking negative. Oh, I don't do this right. You look in the mirror. You know, what do you say when you look in the mirror? Well, most guys say they're a little pot belly. But ladies, I see some beautiful ladies that look in the mirror and because all they see is flaws. They see, oh, my hair's not there, my eyelids. And it's interesting how women think and men think when it comes. When men might have a little dirt on the shirt, just a little dirt. While a lady, when they're going out, just as you could barely see the spot, they're changing that clothes, making sure that they're looking perfect to go outside. So it's a thought process, but shifting your thought, especially among men, is so important. Especially black men needs to know that they are loved. They need to know that they're appreciated and they have a value in our society. That's very important. So thank you very much for mentioning what you said, Keith, because I'm telling you, it's starting to change the way I'm thinking, just by a few words that you said. Thank you very much.
Yay!
Excellent. We have one more, we're going to take one more question, two more. Because we're going to close off the panel soon. We'll take the next two questions and then move forward.
It's not so much a question that I'm going to ask, but everything that you said about, everything that you said about the father being in your life and someone to talk to, me, like what I saw in my dad and the way he treated my mom was just pure violence, and him and I used to fight. My dad didn't teach me nothing. It was my mom who taught me how to love a woman, how to be a man, how to cook, how to clean, how to do all these things. So everything I learned was from my mom. And my dad, I just despised him. I despised him, I hated him. And I didn't have no one to go to, even when my mom was going through all of her problem, and when she was going through the drugs, and then when she was missing 12 years out of my life. Those 12 years that she was missing, all I did was create havoc and rage and anger against other people. I joined, I took Taekwondo for like 6, 7 years out of that 12. And whenever I went into a tournament, I gave out all my rage and my violence against the other opponent, right? And I was just going nuts without anybody to talk to. So I fell into this deep pit. And those were the times when I got older, never got rid of it. And then when I got older, I went to jail twice for the violence that I committed against others. And inside jail is where I found people who were going through certain things, and all of a sudden there's a group of us talking about everything that we've gone through. That's where I found the confidence in me, and then I said, okay, I can release it now. I can release it. Right? And once I released that, one night I got up and I just started to write. That's where, I'm spiritual.
Thought to bring people together, but we can't forget that there are people that do take those medications. There are people that are atheists or have different religions, have different religious affiliations. And I think it's very alienating to say, well, you don't believe in God, so you're not going to get help. Or, you're not, I don't know why you wouldn't believe in God. Like, those kind of things can be hurtful at the same time because not to be receiving the same treatment.
Going back to the foundation of love. what that means for a community.
Pardon me?
Going back to the foundation of love and what that means for a community. Love should not be conditional.
But it is, that's the problem.
And it is conditional.
Yes.
We have to get back to the stage where love becomes love in the purest of form. And when we can demonstrate love and show love to each other in the purest of form, then we know we can turn to each other when we need help.
Final question?
This question is actually for Diana. I wanted to first thank you for sharing your story and commend you. It was so powerful that you were able to be proactive and take that initiative to heal yourself. But I was wondering, when you're speaking about the period when you're leaving your abusive relationship, at that time, did you seek help through traditional services, or if you did, how was your experience, and if you didn't, why not?
When I was in shelter for the 8 weeks, it was part of our, I guess the rules of being there, we had to attend sessions. And they were usually group sessions, but there were also like one-on-one sessions with counselors. So that began with that. But I also was forced to do a list of things, a list of goals that I wanted to accomplish in the future. 10 things that I wanted to do. And I remember it clearly because it was very, I think it was the first time where I actually thought about where I wanted to go, where, just my place in the world and what I wanted to do with. And I remember one of them was to also to give back. I didn't know how that would be. I didn't know, I was just beginning my own journey of healing, but I wanted to give back to others. As well as I remember with my kids, just having a safe place for them in terms of childcare, community, that kind of thing. So these things started to come into my mind. So I did seek outside help for that as well. But I was blessed to also just have people come into my life that were that type of, were able to give me that type of help or that type of figure in my life as well. I also do want to say something because these two gentlemen touched upon something that's so important. And I saw it in my own life and my own situation with my ex. He was very angry, and there was a lot of anger that he had towards his father. His father and mother were married, they're still married, were married for a number of years, raised all of their kids, there was 4 of them together. But he never really had a good relationship with his father. Up till today, he still talks about the way that his dad treated him, the things that he said to him, the things that he did to him. It's still, you know, in his mind. It's still affecting him. And I was able to realize that in a way that I was able to be more empathetic with him. And understand that, yes, he was abusive to me, but what happened to him? What was he experiencing? And what were the things that he was playing in his mind maybe daily? The voices, the negativity that he was holding on to, and it was reflective. Just like the gentleman, he's at the back of the room there, was talking about holding on to that anger, and it was being expressed in other ways to other people. So I realized it had nothing to do with me specifically. I was just in the situation at the time. So I was able to take myself out of that and just realize I wasn't meant to be in that situation, that I was meant for more, and to find the empowerment to get to that point. But also encourage him to do the same thing, because, you know, we as women, yes, we do a lot, we give a lot, but also it is a responsibility for us to take care of our men as well, and make sure that they're getting the things that they need. So that's another thing that I want to express as for us as Black women, to, like you said, to embrace our Black men, to bring them up, to let them know that although there's struggles and there's things in society, we're still there for them. You know, that's very important. So I just wanted to touch upon that. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
That concludes the questions for the panel. I'm sure that you can approach them during the event if you have any further questions. I would now like to invite Sylvia Walsh to give her thanks.
One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
Let's give them another round of applause.
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Don't leave. We have a lot of more exciting things coming. It's not mandatory, but
Stay.
ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, we're going to have a performance by a dub poet, Mr. Colin Jones. As Colin comes to the stage, I'd like to let you know that Colin believes his purpose is to serve God and be the best man that he can be. He's a Christian, and the name of his church is Praise Cathedral Worship Center, where he worships and enjoys being part of the Welcome Center, and he's one of the teachers in the church. He has a psychological degree from Wilfrid Laurier University. The best part of his day is doing God's work with the gift of writing poetry to inspire and make people feel good about themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Colin Jones.
So it's my first time standing in front of you all and reading one of my pieces that I've written. As I've said before, this is my way of releasing my problems and the things that I've built up inside of me. And when I got this gift of writing poetry, it was when I was locked up, and then when I was in jail. And all of a sudden, it just came to me, and God spoke to me in a way that, I mean, it's awesome. So I continue to write. So forgive me if I don't look at you while I'm reading this. I'm new at this. Okay, let me start off by saying this. Why do we have 1 month to explain all this? It happened 400 years ago, but why are we still going through this? Trauma is real, let me say this. I pray day and night for the helpless and the mindless, in hope that they will go through all of this, get through all of this. You see, words of hate is the destruction of mankind, which creates trauma, depression, anxiety, and the wrong mind. So my poem starts off like this. Here they come, here they come. We must run as fast as we can, spoken in that strong African language tongue. But we could not outrun the evil of the bullet coming from the slave master's gun. We must live to fight another day and don't become our prey. For when the sun goes down, night becomes our friend. We must live to fight and escape them. I cry out, mother, mother, where are you? Don't let them take me, I need you. Can you hear my screams? Can you hear my cries? And as I'm dragged and pulled, I stumbled over you, holding the hand of the man who loved you. I have never seen death before. I have never seen death before, but now I'm looking down at two. As anger fills me up, rage rages on. But I know I have to be calm and get the feeling I'm never coming back. But I will continue to fight to be free of for the both of you. Ships sailing far and wide, lives being taken, bodies being thrown overboard into the deep blue sea. The journey of 400 years has just begun. Taken from our motherland, Africa, with chains around our neck, shackles on our feet, scars on our back, and our skin was ripped apart by the hands of the slave master's whip. Trauma of my ancestors' past, you will not consume me, for I feel and hear the voice of my ancestors singing through me. I have found my way back as to who I should be. Darkness of my ancestors, no more will you cover me, for the light that is in them will guide me. No more will trauma and darkness be the death of me, for the light that is in my Father that lives in me will eradicate the darkness and the trauma that surrounds me. Feel the passion and the strength of how they had to live through it all, and let that be a part of you. Eradicate pain and trauma that lives within with the one man who created you. Close your eyes and be still. Meditate on true self-being and it will free you. Stand up, walk tall. Take up your crown and be the king's